Good day, class. Welcome to another lecture. This is the 7th lecture. Today, our focus is going to be on kinship. The question then is, what is kinship? Kinship is seen as the web of relationships woven by family and marriage. So, kinship is based on the type of relationship that exists between people. And this type of relationship that exists between people may either be determined by marriage or by family. This means that when you are related to a person by blood, then you regard that person as your kin member. Or when you are related to a person through marriage, that person is also regarded as a kin member. That is why in several African societies, when a person gets married, we say that he or she is married to the entire family. So per or by the means of marriage, when a woman gets married, the family of her husband is also considered as her family, and vice versa. In traditional African societies, kinship is very important. It determines the social status of a person and also determines who a person can marry or cannot. It also has an influence on the inheritance system that we practice in several African societies. Generally, when we talk about kinship, it's more than just blood ties between or among families. It also includes a network of responsibilities. There are privileges that also comes with being a kin member of a particular kin group. At the same time, so there are support that members are expected to feel. This means that when we talk about kinship, it's not just about the relationship that exists between people, but this relationship also has with it responsibilities and privileges and support that are expected of members of that kin group. But in our modern African societies, due to changes in our social and economic lives, the ties of kinship are beginning to loosen up, especially in the urban centers. And the privileges and responsibilities that are associated with kinship is breaking down gradually. Nonetheless, kinship continues to play a very important role in our traditional setup and even in our modern African societies. Kinship is based on relationships of descent. And in Africa, we talk about the lineage and the clan, and we consider them as descent groups. When we talk about the lineage, we look at it, or it can be seen as a descent system or group where members of that group believe or they know that they are related or they trace their descent from a particular person. So when it comes to lineage, people they know they share the same ancestry. They know themselves and they can tell you that the particular person that they trace their ancestorship to. But when it comes to the descent group known as the clan, the members equally know themselves. They know that they are related to each other, but they are unable to trace how their relationship was formed. Neither are they able to tell which particular person they are related to. Now, the difference between the lineage and the clan is that in the lineage, the people know themselves and they can all trace their ancestorship to one particular person. For instance, I will give an example of my family. So my mother has 6 siblings. I know all the 6 siblings. And I also know their children who are my cousins. I know my grandmother. I know her siblings as well. Now, when it comes to my mother's family, I can say that we are a lineage, and we all trace our descent to our grandmother. And every member of that group knows this and is able to tell who that ancestor is. But when it comes to the clan, it is on a larger scale. So people may know themselves. They may not even know all members of the clan. They are unable to tell the particular or specific individual that they trace their descent to. In scholarship, anthropologists have identified 4 types of descent groups in Africa. These include the patrilineal descent, the matrilineal descent, double descent, and then bilateral descent. Let's look at patrilineal descent. Patrilineal descent is the type of descent where a person or group of people trace their relationships through their fathers. In this type of descent, the male children are favored over the females, especially in terms of inheritance. In patrilineal societies, political power and properties are given to the male bonds of the family over the female children. And a person becomes a member of this descent group through his relationship with the father. One feature of patrilineal societies is that there is a close relationship between a man and his sister's son, whom we will refer to as the nephew. And anthropologists call this type of relationship between a man and his sister's son as avunculate. And in societies where the avunculate is practiced, it sometimes requires the man to give his best cattle to the nephew, or to accept teasing from the nephew. Now, what this means is that when it comes to the avunculate practice, the uncle owes more obligations or responsibilities towards his nephew, and he is allowed to tolerate certain misbehaviors from the nephew. The type of relationship between the nephew and the uncle is so close that they are sometimes regarded as the mother of the child. Examples of societies where the avunculate is practiced includes the Nuer of Sudan, the Zulu and Swazi of Southern Africa. When you come to Ghana, societies like the Gans and the Evers are also patrilineal societies, or they trace their descent through their father's line. The avunculate system is known to be common in South Africa. And in South Africa, the man who is the uncle is even regarded as the mother of the child. So he is referred to as the male mother. What is matrilineal descent? Just like the patrilineal descent, in matrilineal descent, it is the type of descent where relationship is traced through the mother's line. Here, it is the women who determines the descent. The female side determines descent in matrilineal system. So when it comes to the matrilineal system, inheritance is bequeathed to the women in that family. It exists in various societies, just like such as the Bemba of Zambia. And when you come to Ghana, the Akans of Ghana also trace descent matrilineally. That is what we call ena adie, anase odi enadie. The third type of descent is the double descent. And this is a rare type of descent in Africa. It is the type of descent where a person traces his relationship both on the mother's side and the father's side. So the person enjoys privileges and also performs responsibilities from both sides. Example of societies where this type of descent occurs or exists is the Yako of Nigeria and the Herero of Namibia and Botswana. When you come to the Herero of Botswana and Namibia, for instance, the daughters or the women born to such families are liable to inherit ordinary cattle from their mothers. And the men or the sons inherit sacred cattle from their fathers. So in the double descent, you enjoy privileges from both your mother's family and your father's family. The last type of descent is the bilateral descent. And this is a type of descent where a person is considered as equally related to kin on the father's side and mother's side. And this type of descent is more prevalent in other parts of the world than in Africa. In Africa, you find that the bilateral descent exists among people who live on hunting and gathering. And when it comes to the bilateral descent, membership of that descent is flexible. People can choose to identify with their mother's family, or they can also choose to identify with their father's relatives, or they can choose to identify with both. In the hunter-gatherer groups, where this descent is practiced, kinship is not restricted to just a particular group of people. It may extend throughout the whole society, the entire society, such that when a person shares the same name with another person, they are considered as kin group. For instance, if a woman is known as Ajua and another woman born by another family is also called Ajua, it is believed that because they share the same name, they are regarded as family members. And this is usually seen or practiced among the Ku. And this extends to the extent that when a woman bears the same name with another woman, they are regarded as sisters. Because of that, the brother of that woman is not permitted to marry any other woman that her sister bears the same name with. This is because the women, by virtue of sharing the same name, are regarded as sisters, and a man cannot marry his or her sister. That is forbidden because it is regarded as incest or incestuous relationship. In several African societies, a person or every person belongs to one kin group or the other. You may trace your descent through your father's line, through your mother's line. You may trace through both your mother and your father, or you may even practice the bilateral, where you decide either which side you want to trace your descent to. So the descent a person belongs to also has an influence on the family structure. In Africa, the family is broadly defined as a group of people who are related by blood or through marriage, and sometimes also by adoption. People are born into a family, they grow up within that family, and they are socialized to become responsible people in the family. In family, people can live with just their parents and children on their own, or they may live on or they may be a big compound where different families live together. When it comes to marriage, kinship also has an influence on marriage systems in Africa. Whether the type of kinship system you practice or you belong to has an influence on who you can marry and who you cannot marry. In some kinship groups or in some descent groups, a person is not allowed to marry from within the same kinship group, which we call the endogamous type of marriage. And there are times, or there are some societies where a person also has to marry outside his or her own kinship group, which we call the exogamous type of marriage. Based on the type of descent you practice, a person can live with his or her spouse together in a house after marriage, or the wife may live in his or her house whilst the man also lives in his or her house. There are instances too where a man goes to live with his uncle after marriage. The children who are born into marriages in Africa may either live with their parents, the two parents, or live with just one of the parents, or they may live with family relations, relatives like uncles, grandparents, aunties, among many others. You can live within your community or even outside your community. In Africa, marriage can either be monogamous or polygamous. When we talk about polygamous relationship, or what we call polygyny, it basically refers to marriage where a man is married to more than one wife. It is a common practice, or it was a common practice in several African societies, but in actual fact, it was senior people or wealthy people who could afford polygamous marriages. Most of the times when polygamy occurred, the women lived in separate households, and their family unit was based on the mothers and the children. So for instance, if a man had 3 wives, the first wife and her children formed one household. The second wife and her children also formed another household. And the third wife and the children also formed another household or another family unit. Most of the times, every wife had a house or a home to herself, or traditionally, let's say, a hut to herself where she lived with her children. And the husband comes in and go as and when it was their time, was transferred to their children. So in most polygamous marriages, the mother and the children rather formed the basis for the family unit instead of the husband, the wife, and the children. But when it comes to the monogamous marriage, it is the type of marriage where a man is married to one woman. And this type of marriage is now common due to Christianity in Africa. Now let's turn our attention to household. Okay, so a household. A household basically refers to a place where families lived. So it could be a mother, it could be a woman, the husband, and the children. Or it could be a group of nuclear families put together living in one large compound, which is usually referred to as the joint or the extended household. And most of the times, traditionally in Africa, you found the joint or the extended household as the dominant type of household that existed. And when it comes to the joint or the extended family households, you realize that all members of that group live together in a very large compound. You find several nuclear families living together in separate compounds. And in these households, it is usually under the authority of a senior member of that family, who may either be a grandfather or a great-grandfather. And they may trace their descent either patrilineally or matrilineally. What this implies is that when it comes to the joint or the extended households, like we used to see in our villages, there may be a particular compound house where you had different nuclear families living within that compound. So the people living there may be related as siblings, or they may be related by marriage. And there may be an elderly person who oversees the activities of these people living in that compound. Most members of a joint or extended family household are either born and raised into the family, or some marry into it. Sometimes too, children are adopted to become members of that household. So for instance, Opare Mensah has 4 children, and then all his children get married, and then they bring their wives to come and live in that big compound, which has about 6 rooms, and every person is living in one of the rooms on their own. Now, Opare Mensah's children, their wives have become members of that household by marriage. And when they have children, the children also become members of that household by being born into it. And in that particular household, Opare Mensah is the authority in that household because he is the senior member of that family. Sometimes family members are invited to come and live with people in a particular household. That is why you can move from Kumasi to go and visit your uncle in Tamale, or you can move from Sunyani to go and visit your auntie or your sister's wife in Accra. Apart from a household consisting of the wife, the husband, and the children, it may also include maid servants, and in the past it also included slaves that were owned by the people in that house. The household is also an economic unit as well as a family unit, in the sense that members of that group work together economically to provide for the needs of the family. In households, the people may work to pay for their rent, especially when it comes to the cities. In the traditional societies, there may be a piece of land belonging to the whole family, and members of that household may work on it to provide for the needs of the family. Okay, and this brings us to the end of today's lecture. But before we go, I would want to give a brief summary of what we have discussed today. Today we have looked at kinship, and we have said that kinship refers to the web of relationships that exists between people. This relationship may be determined by either marriage or by blood. In the kinship system, we have the clan descent group, and we have the lineage. And we have indicated that in the lineage, members are able to, members know themselves, and they are able to tell or trace their ancestry to one particular person. But when it comes to the clan, it is on a larger scale. Some members may know themselves, but they may not know everybody, and they are unable to tell which specific ancestor they all trace their descent to. We talked about the types of descent. We mentioned the matrilineal descent, which is the type of descent where a person traces his relationship through the mother's line. We talked about patrilineal, the type of descent where a person traces relationship through the father's line. We mentioned double descent, where a person belongs to both the mother and the father's side. And then the bilateral descent, where a person chooses either to belong to the mother's or the father's. And we have said that when it comes to the type of descent, it is not just about the relationship that exists between people. It also has its privileges as well as responsibilities and obligations that members are supposed to provide for each other. We moved on to discuss the family structure, and we said that in Africa, family is very important. There is the nuclear family, there is also the extended family, there is the household, which may consist of just one family or a group of nuclear families living in one large compound. When groups of nuclear families live in one large compound, it is referred to as the joint or the extended household. And we have also said that in the joint or the extended household, it is controlled by one senior member, or authority lies with one senior member who is usually the grandfather or the great-grandfather. The people work together to provide for their needs, and so it makes it both a family unit as well as an economic unit. Thank you.